vendor side of things. Being in organizations, I have to remind people my degree didn't burst into flames the moment that I made the move to that side of our profession. One of the things, though, pardon me, that I always found, regardless of what organization you're a part of, and I think it's easy, but for some people it's not, is presenting. People are always gonna need presenters, they want people coming out, and it's a good way for people to remember you. After you put a presentation on, you'll just get pinged incessantly on Twitter, or make sure you put all that stuff up in your presentation. And I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
Well, do most vendors have library degrees? Or certain vendors have? If somebody wanted to be a vendor, does a library degree help?
Well, yes and no. I would say if you're going to do it, there are plenty of people. I know there are quite a few EBSCO reps that got hired straight out of school, which is, I think, of value. I think when I talk to my colleagues that I'm trying to sell to at the time, it comes across. I don't have to make it clear that I worked in a library, just understanding some of the things. I think it's more valuable to get into a library before you try to jump into the other side of the world. Actually use the tools that you're going to try to sell. I used a subset of the tools that I sell, and those are the ones I tend to sell. The ones that are just now in development, we don't need to get into all that, but I want to make sure that I'm managing expectations well. I think that goes across the board, regardless of what you're doing. Whether you're working with a patron walking off, or your colleague, or yes, you need me to do something for you, let me set an appropriate expectation, and not say, oh, I can get it to you tomorrow, and then I've got to fix something for the rest of the day. Sorry, I went off on the side.
No, that's useful. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to recap what I hear everyone saying, which is it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I swear it's true. It may sound cynical. I think if you do a good job, I love the learn how to present, because I know that worked for me. And just stand up in front of a group of people and be comfortable talking and get to know a lot of people. The very best way to get hired is to be recruited. For someone to come to you and say, I want you to come and work for me. I have done that for others, and I have had people who have recruited me. You still, yes, you have to go through the process, but you kind of have a leg up, and you are very confident and comfortable throughout the entire process.
It's mine to lose.
Yeah.
Well, I did remember the one thing, when you present, you don't have to be an expert. I always used to, the greatest thing about presenting is saying, here's how I did it, and then getting all the feedback from people like, oh, well, if you'd done it this way, it would have been better. It's like, great, let me take some notes, and before you know it, you've got everyone in the audience talking. I think those are the best presentations, where it's not somebody espousing their expertise to you, but starting a conversation. Because that's what our profession really is. The more we collaborate, none of us are going, oh, we've done this great thing at our library, and it's not for you. It's only for us. We want to share, because once we put an idea out into the wild, our idea may evolve and come back to us in a totally new, novel way that we can re-implement.
Okay, I got a new question for you. What is your favorite part of the job? What makes you feel satisfied with the job that you're doing? Or perhaps what was your greatest achievement as a project kind of thing? So it could be general to something specific, or it could be general and. But what makes you happy about your job? And then of course you know what's coming after this question, so you can for the flip side. But
I want to hear what Cal.
I want to say, yeah, what's Cal's favorite part of being a state librarian?
You know what makes me happy about my job is that I love my job. I think it's a good fit for my skill set. And if you have the job that's a good fit for your skill set, you're going to be very comfortable and very happy. You're not going to be stretched outside.
What exactly does the state librarian do? Everything, besides everything.
Well, we do a lot of planning. I think that the main thing is that where my focus is on the national level. So I'm right now representative on the National IMLS committee because it's being reauthorized, the legislation. And I'm pushing hard to get construction funds included in there. Am I getting anywhere? No. I am being voted down repeatedly. But I keep going, I keep trying.
Well, they used to fund construction.
LIS
So how hard is that?
Right. So that's just one example of having an impact on the national level. And that is probably the most rewarding thing about this job. And representing North Carolina around and about when I go out. And we have a really good library reputation nationwide. Just, you may not know that because you live here, but I've got people, we go out and we look good.
I'm sure that's a huge part to your leadership.
I think it's all of us.
The thing I like about my job is, first and foremost, as a vendor, I know where I fall on the hierarchy of importance when I walk into a library. So I don't have any expectations like people are gonna be like, oh, yay. But I get to walk in and out of libraries every day. I get to see where people are doing it really well. I get to see where we're falling down sometimes. And I say we because the success of one library really is the success of all of us. And where someone's falling down, that you never know what those repercussions are going to be. I'm dealing with a library right now who their city manager had terrible experience somewhere else with their library, and he's now taking it out on the current library. All kinds of terrible things. But at the end of the day, I'm there to see what kind of support I can provide. If it's, getting additional articles into somebody's hands, getting the backing of a larger entity, supporting them, knowing that they have a community of, common users. And then, at the end of the day, I get to walk out where someone may need to continue into their little politic, deal with their individual fiefdoms in their organization. I can come in, I let people shake their fist at me sometimes, which is really good for them. And then I get to walk away and do what I can to maybe lessen that fist shaking or turn it into something else. But I can espouse the ideals of our profession without getting caught up in everyone's day-to-day reality of how we do the profession.
My job is a perfect job for me. I'm very fortunate and very lucky to have it. Basically, the key things that I like are the opportunity to be creative and do some hands-on things. So in the last year, I've been doing some unusual enclosures for items in our special collection. So went to a workshop last year to learn how to make clamshell boxes. I already had made some clamshell boxes, but I just felt I was rusty, so I went to that workshop. And then when I came back, my friend to the right gave me some books from our founder, and I made a series of 6 clamshell boxes that matched. And it's like a really good and positive challenge to have that opportunity to do something, use your skills, and then have a nice product at the end of it. I think, my job is a little bit unusual. I'm creating metadata. I'm not really dealing with patrons very often. I'm dealing with inanimate objects, which I'm sort of protecting and conserving for the future, and it's very rewarding.
My face looks like this because I thought you just bought clamshell boxes.
No, yeah.
I didn't know that you made them.
Yeah, just a Whopper box.
You actually measure each individual book and make the box a unique size for that unique item. And
It has to be like acid-free kind of preservation,
Exactly.
kind of safe.
preservation,
Yes.
Yeah, so it's, there are only 4 preservation librarians in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And so I'm fortunate to be one. And, I relish those opportunities.
It's very hands-on. I mean, you're
Yes.
making, doing.
Yes, it's glue, it's knives, it's board, it's paper.
Bone
it's
folders.
Bone folders all over the place, yes.
Okay.
One of the things I like about my job is that it's really, every day is different. And I like that. And it means I get to work with colleagues such as Craig and help them figure out what is the best use of their time and their talent. It's public service. I like working with the public. I also work a lot with donors who are donating their materials. It also means I have to do a lot of public events, and I like that too, where you get to meet people and share your experiences. So it's really something different every day. In addition to working with collections, I still really try and work with collections as much as I can, because that was why I got into this business in the first place.
It's about touching the
It
stuff,
is,
isn't
it
it? You
is.
just wanna.
So, especially I look forward to the summers, because that's when it really winds down a little bit and you can get into the stacks and just work.
Touch it, yeah.
So I think there are 2 things that I really love about my job the most. I work with the digital media team, so we manage not only the structure of the website of the School of Arts, but all the content. And so I get to go out on campus and meet people and write articles about what's going on campus. And I just love that. It's one of the reasons that I was drawn to digital collections, was the storytelling aspect of it. And then the other thing I love is the information management side of it, and just, you know, we get content from departments all over campus, and not everybody writes content for web usability, and so that's really fun. It's like a puzzle. You get to put it together and make it so that it's usable and people can read it and actually know what's going on.
Maybe it's because I have a teaching background, but for me, it's still the aha moment that students and teachers have. Just the other day, we came to the end of a long project where for the 8th grade, we designed, I designed a very poorly designed survey to figure out the kids' reading interests. That we have a lot of kids in our 8th grade who are not reading at all. So we wanted to have them do a book project on an individual title that they thought was good for them and that I thought was good for them. So anyway, it was this long drawn out process, and at the end of it, a kid came up to my office and thanked me profusely for recommending the book, because he loved it and he wanted to find more like it. It was The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, one of the best books ever written. So that little moment when he came up and said thank you was tremendous. And I get those every now and then, and having been a classroom teacher who really connected with students on a personal level, those moments are fewer and further between. So when they happen now as a librarian, it's fantastic. And same goes for teachers. I work with teachers quite a bit. So when plans come together, that's a really great moment. We recently did a zombie outbreak project at the school where the 8th graders had to figure out whether it was bacterial, viral, or a parasite. So we had all sorts of things staged around the building. And at the end of it, one of the students, you know, a really high performing student, but she's not really as engaged as an 8th grader, came up to myself and the 8th grade teachers and said, can we do more stuff like this? Like, this is how we should be learning. So those little moments like that make the job.
My favorite thing about my job is similar to what Gabriel was saying. Since I work in a community college, I work with a lot of non-traditional students, and the specific library where I work, Coastal Carolina Community College, is near Camp Lejeune, so I also work with a lot of veterans. And what's rewarding about that is, you know, like Gabriel said, the aha moment, and, you know, people who thought that they couldn't get through college, you know, helping them to realize that, you know, I can help them to organize some tools to, you know, get through that. Also, you know, working with teachers and putting together research guides that, you know, they find very helpful. They'll actually come up to me, you know, in another environment and say, you know, this was really helpful. This really helped my students, and, you know, getting that appreciation is very rewarding.
Okay, I've got another question. Okay, I'm not coming right back at you with what's worse, but it's coming. So when you were doing your library education, what were the courses that really helped you the most? And did you have practicums, and were that helpful? If you're an employer, do you offer practicums? And so how, basically the big picture question is how you get prepared. And if there was something you might have really benefited from that, you know, might not have been in the curriculum, but just talk about being prepared, and so we'll have different responses to that, so.
The classes that helped me the most with what I'm doing now are the reference course that I took. That's when I really learned how to build look guides and research guides, and I've really learned how to do reg reference and that type of thing. Also collection development, I do a lot of collection development. I'm the liaison at my school for English, social sciences, and fine arts. So, you know, knowing how to use the collection development tools and how to, you know, get appropriate resources was helpful. And then also all of the classes I took that had to do with instructional design were very helpful as well.
And did you do a practice? You did a practice.
Yeah, and the practicum, that was one of the biggest things that was helpful. I did my practicum at GTCC at Guilford Tech. And of course, since I was still in a community college environment, you know, that was very helpful too. Then, you know, it's really, you know, the same things that I learned at GTCC, or, you know, it's the same environment really at Coastal. So.
God, every single class that I took here. I think that even though I consider myself a pretty techie person, the technology courses that I took really helped me view the technology from an instructional standpoint as opposed to just another cool tool. And so one of the conversations I have with teachers a lot now is, you know, they find these apps or they find these websites, they want to use them. I feel confident enough to take a step back and we look at the content first, we look at what objectives they're trying to pursue here, and then we see if the tool fits, or if there's a better tool, or if there are other things we can do. So those classes really helped. And then the management class, I'm still working through some management issues, but like it's given me a good framework for managing adults and working with other adults.
I kind of have to echo what Gabe said. It's really hard to narrow it down, but there are definitely some classes that have direct impact. Took Dr. Chow's website design and usability class, and honestly, that's pretty relevant. I took digital collections with Dr. Bird, and that's been very helpful. And then the management class was just gives you a good perspective on the way things can be managed and the way good managers do things, and sort of helps you be a better employee and maybe eventually down the road a good manager. And then one of the most important things to me when I came into grad school was to do internships and practicums. And I had an internship at Wake Forest, and I was very fortunate that Tanya listened to me and what I was interested in. And she connected me with the digital initiatives librarian and got really good experience that's helped me in my current job.
I would say I learned the most from I had to do an internship, and I highly recommend internships because it kind of shows you that the skill sets that you developed, you can apply them anywhere. You know, it's not one place or another. I also took a personnel management class in graduate school, and someone asked me what has surprised me most about my career, and I would have to say the amount of time I spend managing other people and knowing what they need and trying to figure out how to solve problems. And the more workshops you can take, the more experience you can get, I would highly recommend it, because all of us manage others, whether it's a student, it's a volunteer, it's an intern, it's an employee, and the more skill sets we have, the better.
When I was in school, I was sort of dying to have a course in, surprise, preservation. So there was not really anything offered at UNCG, and I looked into courses at other schools, and it just was a little too hard to pull off. So I just set up an independent study class with Dr. Carmichael, and I designed basically a college course in preservation. So what would someone who took a course like the one I wanted to take need to know? So I designed sort of lesson plans with diagrams and just the basic core elements of preservation. And I'm still using a lot of the handouts that I made for that theoretical class because I hand them out in my book repair workshops. And so it's been very, very useful, even though I didn't really have a faculty member teaching me. It was
I'm just
awesome.
looking back at the faculty because there's an adjunct professor perhaps sitting up here that he's got a class ready to go. It'll pay really well.
Lots of yum yum every day.
I think we would probably have enough people wanting to take a preservation class. Write that down back there, table.
You're always looking for the next job that's going to be that step up or towards, what you love. I don't know if the trend's still the same. I know when I was going to school in 2003, 2005, huge amount of our colleagues were retiring at that time. So for me, I decided to really focus on technology. The one thing I wasn't going to be able to bring to the profession at that point was 30 years of experience, 50 years of experience. But what I knew I could do is bring something that those colleagues that were leaving the profession may have not had, or may have just had an inkling of, which is kind of the trend where we're going now. Everyone's got a pocket computer, and with how we put the library in people's pockets and things like that. So that's what I was thinking. And then of course your management class. Didn't teach me how to manage anybody because I'm not a manager, but I think it helped me be a good colleague, teammate, understanding the things that we go through. I mean, as people, maybe you all aren't weird, but I'm kind of weird. It's hard to tap that thing down. There's no concept that's going to apply to everybody, and that's the understanding is, being a good, person that you're going to spend 40 hours of your week with is helpful to the sanity of all of us at times.
Well, I did not take a practicum or any kind of experience, and I wish I had, or done what Craig did, which I think is really cool, and I think that's the future of education, but don't get me started. I will tell you that I was completely unprepared. I had been like a waitress and, done babysitter and stuff, but when I realized when I got into my first real job with, real hours, that my entire concept of the working world came from the Dagwood comic strip. And I literally thought that my boss could come in at any time for no reason at all and kick me in the hind quarters and say, "You're fired." I mean, I literally thought that's how it would. So I would be walking down the hall and someone would stop me to talk to me and I'm like, I'm getting nervous. We can't talk, we're not working. I don't, what if the boss comes? So I was pretty naive. But anyway.
You seem to have gotten past.
Well, yeah, pretty fast.
Everyone in the rear is
never.
In the hallways.
Never. But that was kind of funny.
Do you have internships and practicums?
Yes, we do. We have not practicums, but we do have internships, mainly in our digital information management program, and they're fabulous internships. We've got some really cool projects, so I would encourage, and we're very sort of not very organized about it. I mean, they're always filled up, but it's sort of who do you know, kind of, oh, I know somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah.
So I don't even really understand how they're filled, but they are.
Well, and I guess the question's not for you guys yet, but so do you ever have an internship or practicum for a hands-on? Tanya, do you guys? And then
Nice.
you guys will probably offer them later, right, when you're there a little longer. But I mean, what do you see as your role in helping prepare the professionals coming, the future professionals coming through like our programs? Or do you not feel that? You feel free not to feel that, but.
I never really had any interns or anything, but I had students every semester, and so they do a lot of the same work I'm doing.
So if we had students who wanted to do a preservation internship, would you be open to maybe having some students coming in?
With the approval of my supervisor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like something that could help you. Hey, we put together a whole class, so I mean.
And, you know, I have had at least one student who went into field preservation, and that was awesome. And that was maybe one of the most awesome moments ever. You know, but, yeah, so I enjoy that. I enjoy working with students, teaching them how to do work.
Because we also have independent studies that could work for some of these things too.
Right, and I think the thing about an internship is that, for the most part, the internships that we do offer, although Corinne's was specifically designed for her and what she needed, we usually try and do a more broad internship where basically they get, especially we mostly offer archival internships, and then they focus in a specific area for maybe 2 weeks. So it's not necessarily an in-depth internship, but something where you move around, you really get to see, is this something I want to do in my life?
I want to pass that down to Nicole because you brought up the word, the T word, technology a lot. And I know you guys have only been out for a few years and you guys have been out for a lot fewer years. But how are you going to keep up with changes in technology? Now that you kind of have a sense of your job, is it something that's built into your job, or is this something you're going to have to go home at night, you know, and figure out how to use this technology, and then we'll come back to Cal and it's like, how do you keep up with technology? So.
Since I took I've only been working at Coastal since October, and I've had to learn a lot of things in terms of, you know, I've done some cataloging, I've done some different things that have to do with technology, and you know, it's just something, it is built into the job, and it's really something where you just kind of learn as you go. It's nothing that you can really prepare for. It's just as things come, you know, you just have to pick it up.
Yeah, I think it's intrinsic to my position. It's part of the language that I speak at this point, I think. So adapting to new technologies is expected. So I guess I just see it as one of my job duties. So I'm not too worried about it. And also we've got a little budding makerspace in my library. So one of the things is I'm not an expert on the 3D printer. I'm not an expert on 3D design or on stop motion or any of these things. And part of the vision for the library is, like, you know, we learn by failure, we learn by trying things. So it actually kind of makes sense that technology changes often, and it kind of helps me further what I'm trying to push onto the students.
You're all learning together.
Yeah.
Well, technology is definitely built into my job. But I think it's also helpful that I work with a team that's very interested in it, and they're always wanting to know what the next thing is. And so if you're in a library or another position, you may find somebody that is more interested in it than you. But I think a really good thing too is the conferences and the professional organizations, because you hear a lot about new things like makerspaces that you may not know about, or you may not think it's accessible. One of the practicums I did while I was a student was with a team that did a mobile 3D printer. And so just going around and showing people how to use it, that it was technology that's accessible, was very helpful. And we did that at some conferences around campus.
Really, technology is built into my job, and I'm really fortunate to be in an academic library where we have a technology team. And so technology is talked about all the time. But I would also say continuing education, webinars, and Twitter. Those are probably the 3 ways I find that.
This is my primary technology right here. I got 2 of these.
Do you have to take care of your hands like a pianist or something, or you can't play tennis or something?
Cut off and everything. But no, I use technology for record keeping and so on. I do a good bit of design work as well, so I use design software for that aspect of it, just completely different than my hands-on work.
Well, I'm in a unique position. I'm selling technology. And the thing that I always try to remember and that I talk about, it's just tools. It's tools that help us engage or do whatever, and that's the goal is, you know, you don't want to spend all your time focused on the technology, because then we end up giving the finger to somebody who needs our help while I'm dealing with this tool. So, it's good to be aware of it, and very often our patrons are going to push us to learn new things. I've got this device, fill it up, please, or teach me how to use this, please. So it's good to be aware of it, but we don't need to necessarily, I mean, like what Craig was saying, his technology is his hands, his mind, you know, those are the kinds of things we want to do. Find tools that make our job of engaging with people easier, hopefully, but don't get caught up too much in it, because there's 18 different flavors of a piece of tech or a technological tool or something like that.
Yeah, and I have a weak spot for devices. And I drive an old car, and I'm not a fashion maven, but golly, I cannot resist the newest and latest tablet, phone, or whatever. So I'm 3/4 of me is in the Apple camp, and I'm fighting back with the Chromebook, trying to keep from getting subsumed. So I think the way I keep up with technology is I do it myself. I don't expect it to be done on the job. Now, interestingly, we did fund innovation grants a couple of years ago, and we called them the Shark Tank grants, because the people who were proposing innovative projects, in many instances, we said, okay, you're gonna have to come and explain this to us in person, because we don't get it. So it was like they came in and presented we weren't sharks, we were very nice, but it was really cool. And so I think it's just not being afraid to say, I don't get it, tell me again. I don't understand, show me, So I think you just have to be kind of open to it.
Okay, I've got the question we put off for a while, and then I'll have one more question, and then we'll open it up for so start thinking of really good, you have to impress, no, don't feel bad, but you have to impress these people. Really. So, what's the most challenging part of your job? Maybe something that's not quite your favorite thing, and how do you deal with that? Because that's just a reality of the job. We don't love everything we do, but it's probably still an important thing that you have to figure out how to do it and do it well.
Yeah, probably the most challenging thing for me is change. I frankly kind of like change. I am certainly not afraid of it. And so managing change that's a rough row to hoe with some staff who are very, very resistant to change. And in fact, I'm not sure you can manage change successfully if your staff member's mind has shut down and they're not open to change. And unfortunately, change is the name of the game in this environment, y'all. So I would say, do what you can to be, you may not be comfortable with change, but the saddest thing for me is, and I'm seeing this in the profession, I'm not going to change. In fact, it reminds me back when computers were first coming in libraries. And I knew older library directors at the time who embraced it. They were like on top of it. And I knew others who were, I'm just going to retire now and let you young whippersnappers, handle the technology. So it's all in your mind. I mean, it's a state of mind. It doesn't have to do with your age or how much experience you have. It's just how you approach it. So I feel sorry for the people that are threatened by the changes, because I see them as a huge opportunity for libraries.
Good answer.
Well, for me, it's quarterly goals. Making numbers and those kinds of things. But fortunately, unlike some of my colleagues who are sales professionals, I know I have a very attractive exit strategy. I've already been told by a few library directors that they would actually see me being fired from a vendor as a positive in the, not that I was just some jackleg going in and, upsetting all of my customers, but, if it's a matter of Drew wasn't hitting his numbers and those kinds of things. So, but again, that's, when it gets into this idea of coming directly out of library school and going right into a vendor, I think I know what libraries hold for me. I value that. I'd love to get back to that. And plus, you know, in libraries, it's a different business model. And it's a matter of having those conversations, knowing what people want and being long-term. And then I can explain, you know, kind of explain away some of my deficits with that kind of language to my management.
Committees,
Meetings.
I can't stand meetings, it's sometimes, don't like it, sorry,
Except our meeting.
except our meetings. But that's it, committees.
For me, it's lack of resources. But at the same time, that's one of the reasons I really took this job, because I've only been at Wake Forest for 3 years, was the ultimate challenge of turning it all around, that it's not going to be that way. I have a feeling I probably have some colleagues that hate to see me coming, because it's kind of a one-track mind. It's kind of just a continual drumbeat that we are going to get the resources we need, and I will make sure it happens.
So we launched our new website in December, and one of the things that we included on the footer of every single page is a website feedback button. And I manage all of the feedback. And I'm not a confrontational person, but I think that's why I got assigned that job. I can be pretty diplomatic. And I've learned a lot from it. We actually get, even in the complaints, we get a lot of perspective from the users, and that's very helpful. And for the most part, it's not that bad, but I would say dealing with some of those emails is probably the hardest.
For me, it's when I hear from teachers words that will make any librarian cringe. We don't want to cite for this project. Like, we're not going to have the students cite their sources for this project. So and what it boils down to really is there are a few teachers who are still using the tools from like 3 or 4 librarians ago, and a lot of them are dying out of them. A lot of them, we don't even have those anymore. I mean, NCY's office changed a lot of its resources, and next year they're going to get a rude awakening. I mean, I'm going to hopefully have the opportunity to show them all the changes, and that's like for me, it's a doorway in now. Like, okay, everything's changed, so here I am. But to hear those words, it's rough.
I guess the thing that I don't like about my job is we have even though we're considered a full staff, it's still not enough people to respond to a lot of the students' concerns and demands and faculty. We have a lot of classes that we have to teach, and it's really like 2 librarians, me and another librarian who teach all of those classes. The other thing is I would piggyback on what someone else said about lack of resources. Coastal it's not necessarily a small community college, but it's kind of a mid-sized community college, and we don't really have, we really depend a lot on NC Live, and we depend a lot on UNCW, which is, of course, the university in the area. We do a lot of ILLs because there's a lot of things that students are working on that we just don't have materials to respond to that.
Okay, what we're going to do now is open it up for questions, and then your final question will be final words of advice, not the same ones you gave us for the introduction on fire. So, given everything that we've talked about this morning. So, questions, and we have some people online that, if anybody has a question. Questions. Go ahead, Sarah.
I wanted to ask about, you mentioned particularly about presenting and sharing knowledge and all that. How do you tell when what you have is worth communicating and putting out there? How do you know I should do a presentation about this, or I need to write this up?
Good question.
Is that for everybody or just for?
I can start, or you have the mic.
Yeah,
If you can start.
I'll jump in
You have
just
the
because,
power
just
to
because
talk
last year I worked with a very ambitious ITF, instructional technology facilitator, and he's going to go places. You'll know his name, Greg Garner. Look him up. He's fantastic. But he was all about presenting, and so we immediately presented at one of the first conferences last year. And I didn't think it was enough, but we talked about year one of a makerspace where it just sort of like all fell together. And it was very much like what was said, where you're not necessarily the expert, you're just putting out there what you've done, and you get feedback from people. So really it's once you have an idea that you care about and that you think is worth sharing and developing, don't think about it just as like, oh, I have this expert idea. Think about it as I have an idea that could go places. Let's see how we can workshop this. So that's my piece of advice is don't shy away from it.
I get this a lot from our younger librarians at CSR. Oh, well, I really don't have an idea that's innovative enough to share. Like, oh my goodness, no. My very first paper was on ordering and purchasing supplies. You always have some experience that is of value for someone else to hear how you did it or what you think about it. It's not that it has to be innovative, it has to be helpful and thought-provoking.
It seems like T-shirts or something with slogans.
Anything you're doing in your professional job is potential fodder for a presentation or teaching experience. That's really all you need. If you believe in it and you were doing it, then you can present on it.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, did I do work? Did that work have a positive outcome? And in fact, the present where the work had not the intended outcome or was a failure or we tried to implement something, those are good ones. What kind of impact did it have? But more importantly, did I do some work that I see of value to the profession? And more importantly, will I get some feedback from my audience that might help me refine that work that I did and do it better the next time or the next iteration?
Well, my first one, I would recommend this. Apply to present at NCLA. If it's no good, they're not going to accept you. If they accept you, then you're going to assume that there's some interest. That's exactly what I did. As a youth services librarian, I got so sick and tired of hearing my peers around the state go, oh, poor pitiful me, I don't have a budget. Oh, they never send me anywhere. I was in Murphy, you guys. You talk about Murphy. And so I put together this presentation called Advice from the School of Hard Knocks. And it was stuff I learned the hard way. And which is, if you let people walk all over you, guess what? They will. Stand up for yourself. Don't poor mouth yourself. And so really it was kind of a harangue. And at this point in time, I was working at Forsyth County Public Library for Bill Roberts, who you may have heard of. He was quite a force in this state for many years. And so I'm getting ready to, this is my very first presentation ever. I'm pretty nervous. I look up, guess who's sitting in the audience? My boss, my big boss. And some of my stories were about him. And I don't use names. He recognized him. But they were all in a very flattering way. So just, put yourself out there.
Other questions? Chase, let us know if someone's got a question. No, that was an excellent question. So you got to top that question, folks.
There is one.
Okay, would you read the question or?
Yes, this is from someone named Whitley. Her question is, what do you do when you've applied for internships and jobs and just never hear anything at all or just hear rejections? What's the best advice for approaching that kind of syndrome?
Well, I see this a lot on ALA Think Tank, that people who write and say, what am I doing wrong? I think you're going to have to ask somebody. You're going to have to get somebody with the guts who's going to say, listen, this is what's really going on. If there is indeed, like, you're not presenting well, or you seem like you're too nervous, or you got to get down to the real deal. That means finding somebody who will be honest with you.
And there's lots of things on, what was the application process and those kinds of things. Sometimes if you're just doing outreach to try to set up an internship, it's how you kind of create your email. You might want to say, Yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. If I don't, I'll just be there June 1st. You know? And then they're gonna respond to you, or you're gonna be showing up to start your internship that day. I mean, take control. I mean, if you've only sent in one, letter of application or something, and then you're waiting, I mean, be proactive, follow up. Talk about your strengths, not just I'm gonna be free employment for you, but here are my skill sets that I'd like to bring. Here's some goals I see. And then maybe you might create an internship out of something that may or may not have been there, who knows?
Let's say, get your resume, go to local libraries and archives and visit them, meet with the director, leave your resume, make an impression, and just keep doing that. Because a lot of times the process itself is in the way of you actually making a connection. So just make that connection, just sort of step outside of the process and actually meet people.
I would really echo what Cal said. I think that maybe getting some feedback in your contact letters, your resume. I know SAA at its annual meeting does a career center where you can meet with someone and they will review your resume and give you advice. And I think also following up, connecting, touching base. It's really easy to reject if you just get a letter or an email. Whereas if someone knows you, I think it's much more likely that you'll be successful. So the more connections and networking you can make, the better.
Does it help to have like a faculty member that, knows you, make a connection sometimes? Or does that hurt? Or does that come in as too big, like?
I think if it's your work life and your career, then you are responsible for that.
From personal experience, sometimes finding a job is just hard, and especially if you don't have a lot of experience. And Dr. Chow and I were talking about that a little bit earlier. So I think it's important to just stay connected to the field any way that you can, and volunteer, find ways to get experience, and then really think about how what you've already done is relevant. I worked as a reporter before I went back to grad school, but there are definitely some relevant skills that I learned, and I think you can do that with any job and make it apply to what you need.
Well, the rejection's usually not personal, right? Because you never had a connection to start with. But my former grad assistant said it was 9 months of soul-sucking, crushing rejections, and it was like, no, it's just a process. And I think if you get stuck, and it's like, oh, it's me, and it's there are a lot of people looking for jobs right now.
I think that's why it's important to stay connected so you don't sort of get demoralized.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have something?
I would just, reiterate what everyone else said, as far as, staying connected to the industry and also cultivating different skills that, like don't wait for, your supervisor or for it to be required of you to do something. Try to, like I blog, I do other things outside of, librarianship that can be valuable to the industry. So do things to make yourself marketable and put yourself that step ahead of people who are applying as well.
Good question. Any other questions? Come on. One more question and then we'll finish up.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe for the people who are hiring, is there a skill or an attribute you wish you saw more of? That you would say to folks who are coming out, really get this, because it'll set you apart.
Yes. There are many things that I would like to see, and I think some of it is being an advocate for yourself and believing in yourself. I think, and I know this is hard. It's hard to come on a job interview where you really want that job and you feel, I think you talked about this a little earlier, where you want to fit in and make yourself fit into the institution. You're so scared. But you really need to think about this. It's not that they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them too. And maybe this isn't the right job for you. And I've had people ask, well, I don't know if I should go interview. And I said, oh, always go interview, because it's really teaching you about yourself. What are your needs? What are your wants? what is it you want out of this? And I would like to see that more when we interview people, more of a self-consciousness about who you are and what you would bring to the table. And I think people are so afraid when they interview, and I understand that. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've lost jobs that I really wanted, and I know what it's like. But if you believe in yourself, you'll end up where you're supposed to be.
And I'd like to follow up on that, and then what I'm not seeing is energy and enthusiasm. And I'm sorry, but I wanted energetic staff. We're doing a lot of different things. We've got irons in the fire, and we gotta keep things going. Sometimes, and one of my, on every interview, one of my questions is, you're going to have to work faster than you're comfortable with in this job. How are you gonna do that? Because it's a fact of life. It's gonna happen. Sorry, I can't protect you from that happening. So I think a little bit of, not salesman, not sleazy salesman. This is why I'm right for this job kind of stuff. I think it impresses me.
Somebody mentioned passion once. They're worth
Yeah.
seeing the passion
Yeah.
in interviews. You may not have the experience, but you should really want that job because you want to do that.
You not just any job. I want this job in
Yeah.
particular.
Well, and I shouldn't say hate, I dislike the term customer service, but we are a service industry. And I think that's the thing that we need to have, that engagement, that desire to help. So I think that's better than customer service, the desire to help, to realize that this is me, potentially. This is someone who has a desire for something, whether it's learning, information, just someone to talk to today. And being able to effectively work with them and then pivot to the next opportunity to make people love the library. I mean, I always talk, we were told, meet the needs of the user. That shouldn't be something we aspire to. That should be the baseline from where we start. And then our goal should be, how do we wow this person that we're with and turn them into library advocates so that they walk out the door and they're telling their friend, oh my gosh, go to Greensboro Public or go to wherever or go to your school, one of your roommates. Man, I just had the best help on my paper. Go to the library. Because when we tell people to go to the library, they're like, oh yeah, sure. So, you're a librarian, of course you are. But when somebody who has no connection is like, use the library, I mean, that's the goal. We want everybody, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, whatever your view is, you can get help at the library. So that idea of, helpfulness.
Well, we're gonna wrap it up because they're gonna need tablecloths and silverware on here. But short parting words of advice, given that this has been really, really good. I think this will be very helpful for students to review and very inspirational. So Cal, parting words of advice.
I am your state librarian. You can call me, you can come visit, if there's anything I can do. There's this whole underground, people who call people, so-and-so applied for a job. You're not listed as a reference. Do you know her? Do you know him? There's a lot of that going on in the world. If I know you and somebody calls me, I'm gonna be sure to give you a really good reference. So let me get to know you. I'm here to help.
Well, I didn't mention this, do practicum. I mean, that's literally how I got my job at Greensboro College. I had done my practicum there, and they were going through their SACS review, and one of the points was they needed another librarian, and I happened to be key in there. They liked me, so they gave me a job. So do your practicum hours, and volunteer, and just know that we have a great profession, and we'll save the world.
That's hard to touch.
Sorry.
I would say establish relationships with your colleagues and coworkers where you are and outside of your workplace, and look for opportunities to do things professionally with them. It's super important.
I think knowing yourself, knowing your skills, knowing your talents, sit and actually think about it. What do you want to accomplish in your life? And then you will find the jobs that best match you, and then you'll be more successful.
I would just say, be open-minded, be open to really look at the job descriptions, really think about, even if initially you don't think it's a job you want to do, or there may be things that you get hung up on, really think about how it can help you with your career goals. And then what's really helped me is to sort of let go of the idea, well, I don't know if I want to do this job, or live in this city, or, I don't know if I want to do this specific thing. Just get through the interview process, and then you can make the decision after.
I would say prepare by obviously looking at the job description thing. That's very important. But think about the institution. Get to know the institution that you're applying for. Get to know it well. And I think prepare questions centered around the institution that might be a little challenging for your interview panel to answer. I think it shows that you've done your diligence and you've done your research on the place, and that you have certain expectations of it.
I would say to view yourself as a lifelong learner. Keep reading and keep getting versed on things in the profession, not just in the profession, but outside the profession, like I was saying before. Try to develop skills that, really make you a unique, fit for the job.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all for coming today. This was absolutely wonderful. I know some people have some questions you can go ask, and as we get things transitioned. Some of the panels staying for lunch, so if you're staying for lunch, feel free to hang out with panelists. But thank you just so much for coming. You did a great job. Craig, I'm not sure. I like the knee thing there.
Stuck on my head.